Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and joining our AMA this week. We're excited about everything that we've got going on with LeagueDAO. A lot of movement going on, a lot of positive things happening, both in the community, but also behind the scenes. So, like how we normally structure this, I'll start by giving an update around all things LeagueDAO, what the team's working on, and then we'll pivot to the AMA questions and let anyone who wants to come up and speak join in. So over the past week, so we started, this week was the beginning of sprint number 2 in our current roadmap, or I would say milestone that we're working on that basically takes us from now to the beginning of football season. We're making a lot of progress on front end dev and UI, and we've gotten to the point where a lot of the core updates to the actual app UI, the front end has been built, and now the devs are pivoting to connecting the front end to the back end and starting to pull the data and actually make the front end interactive and informed by what's going on the back end. We also are wrapping up and making a lot of progress on the smart contracts. How we're building version 2 of the protocol of our core fantasy football protocol is there's actually sort of, I would say, 3 different unique applications that make up this whole protocol. One is the actual league app where you go and manage your team and you set your roster and you have your head-to-head matchups. It's also where you research stats and do all that sort of stuff. And then that's the core app or the core place. And all this will live under one sort of URL, one sort of cohesive ecosystem. So you're not jumping from one application to another, but it's all staying contained. Then the other is the actual draft application. This is where each of the divisions teams will actually go and draft their players for the season, or draft your player NFTs. And then the third is the marketplace. And that's where you'll be able to bid on and buy free agent players throughout the season. So each of those has its own smart contracts that we are, that are unique to that one. So, and we also have different teams working on these different components. But everything is moving forward on that front. So that's really exciting. I think we're making good progress, and we're staying on track with our timeline. So we're really happy with that. And then beyond that, we're continuing to talk to different communities and projects to build strategies around some partnerships and line up a number of partnerships, and that'll enable us to grow the core, our core community as we head towards the football season, and really around the launch of the League Pass NFT, which is where people will be able to buy a League Pass and then redeem that to join the actual fantasy league, as opposed to having to pay for each individual player. You mint the League Pass NFT, and then that'll also, within that process, you get the tokens that you need in order to actually draft your team of players. So that's all progressing. Like I said, we're getting good updates there and positive movement, and we're working to line up a large queue of projects that we think align with our core value prop in our core community. And so it's not just let's partner with every NFT project and give them whitelist spots so that way we pump up the number of people in the Discord. It's making sure that we're actually aligning with communities that have people that are going to want to play fantasy football and actually mint League Pass NFTs and use them to participate. So that's all happening, and we're working on that. And then for those that aren't aware, we launched yesterday. We launched a new snapshot vote, and this proposal is stemming from one of the forum conversations that we've had going on, specifically around utility for the league token. The last week we had the snapshot vote that passed unanimously, which was great. Specifically, applying the league token to the marketplace, where you will need to use the league token to bid on and purchase free agents during the season. That passed, so that's great, and we're moving forward with that implementation. And now the new one that we have is regarding the draft. So, right, each division will be made up of 12 teams. So when you buy your League Pass NFT, you redeem that NFT, and you are automatically assigned and randomly assigned to a division of 12 teams. Now, each of those divisions will have their own player draft, separate from all the other divisions. And the draft order, because we are using a snake draft format, the order of that draft will be determined by how many, like the amount of league tokens held in the users' wallets. And you'll be able to see the other teams in your division, and then can decide if it's worth it to maybe move up a couple spots by adding some league to your wallet. But you don't have to, and I think for all of us who've played fantasy football and fantasy sports, we know that the draft order doesn't necessarily determine who's going to win or lose the season. But it was something that we felt was a pretty simple application and added another little element of game to the experience, and was in line with our goal of implementing the league token to be sort of a central point of value within the actual game itself. So that snapshot vote is up. So please vote if you haven't. And notice that someone voted no on the snapshot, which is totally fair. But if you aren't in favor and are strongly against it, we just ask that you also weigh in the forum, and so that and explain why you don't support the proposal, and what alternatives you might propose. I think that's the big thing, is that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the forum and from conversations, and so we're moving forward with that. But we do want to know if people don't support it. We want to know why, and so that way we can take that into account and actually have that turn into a more productive conversation, as opposed to just sort of someone just saying, no, I don't like it. So putting that out there, because that would be it's always helpful, and we definitely want more feedback, or as much feedback as we can get from the community. So that covers, I would say, a lot of the big pieces for us right now. Most of our work and our time is devoted towards building out the core product, and working on our strategy in terms of growth, and but strategic growth, as opposed to just like growing for the sake of growing. So we're moving forward with all of that stuff. And I guess with that, we can now move to the actual AMA part, unless there's anyone else, or any other of the speakers that want to weigh in.
Thank you for going ahead and stopping in. Lots of stuff going on behind the scenes. We're talking about the marketplace. We're talking about how to do the draft in a way that's scalable. It's just been a hectic couple weeks, I'm not going to lie. And then having the ability to go ahead and back and forth on the forums, which we're getting a lot of positive feedback here, but always welcome to hear more. Always welcome to go ahead and hear other suggestions. Algie and I have something going on in the AMAs here.
Do you let me invite you on stage, Algie? Or usually I think you can just come right up. There we go.
Hey, Algie.
Like jump up there, but I wasn't able to. Jake doesn't want me to be able to do that anymore. No, I'm just kidding. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah.
All right, nice. Yeah, we were just talking about like how, because I forgot what channel. I was trying to respond in the channel that we were already talking about it, but I like just couldn't find it, so I just said it in the AMA channel. But like Jake brought up like what are like some of the other fantasy apps that we like to use. And I was thinking, and it made me think about how like on Universe we're starting to move towards like thinking about displaying certain things like for example like rarity and maybe like analytics and like possible ways to do this. And it's come across like that a good way it might be to like decentralize it in a sense that you're displaying like your own analytics, of course, and highlighting those, but also allowing people to view analytics from like other sources just on your UI so that they don't have to leave your website to do this. And, but also it can give them like a more informed breakdown and like help them make a more clear decision. So like it can enhance like the entire experience just because they feel more comfortable and like don't feel like they're getting like some biased analytics, for example. But yeah, I think that it was actually the conversation that we were having separately from the AMA that made me think about that. But I asked it in the channel because I forgot where we were talking about it.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I mean, I think to answer it, it helps to kind of break down where we're getting data now, because so right now, a lot of the data that we have is coming from our like API or like our sports API, which is sports data .io, and like they provide the sports feed, like the data feeds uh, for FanDuel and a bunch of other fantasy platforms. And they, as a part of the license that we've negotiated, we're able to access projections and but projections and fantasy sports scoring that well scoring we want to make sure that it aligns with whatever like the specific scoring that we are using in the league is as opposed to because different platforms have different scoring like mechanisms but in terms of like just like overall stats and projections those are actually like sports data actually also provides um, breakdowns according from like FanDuel, Yahoo, Fantasy Draft, DraftKings. So it isn't a true decentralized like feed of data at this stage, but just for like the specific matter of like projections. But and part of that's also because the projections and that type of data isn't on chain, and it doesn't necessarily in I think it's a scenario where it probably doesn't even make sense to put that data on chain. It's the actual like the final scoring that and stats that we want to make sure is on chain. And to that point, that's where there's a larger conversation about like the oracles that we build and like where we're getting how we're getting that off chain data and putting it on chain and the sources of that data. So that's something a little bit bigger. But there's in order to provide like just like a good user experience, there's going to be data displayed in the app that isn't necessarily like the hard on-chain data because it's not impacting the actual like scoring and points within the league, which is more of the like research data and like stats and projections and things like that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like it's important to have it on chain and stuff. Yeah, I think that what I was yeah, that's important too. That's something that and is like doesn't really exist right now as well. Like there's not really like a good on chain like project that is keeping track of this stuff that I know of, except for like there's projects working towards it, but yeah, I was saying mainly like the actual data itself though, like when you go on ESPN and Yahoo, like who's picking that? Like their team, like that's like not really decentralized in a sense, even if it was on chain, because of the fact that it's all coming from one source. I think that also it's important to have like it decentralized in the aspect that there's multiple sources and it's not like one one group, like coming up with the numbers, if that makes sense. But the sources, like the sources you're pulling from, should have a decentralized mechanism as well to be getting the numbers that they're grabbing, if that makes sense. So like having like multiple decentralized mechanisms that work maybe differently is probably the best way to go about it, in my opinion.
Eventually, yeah. Just right now with the way things are scaled at right now, I don't think it makes sense at the current stage. But as this grows, 100%, it's on the radar. That's like the only reason like why we use Chainlink for certain things like randomization and stuff, but we really don't use Chainlink for the actual Oracle inbounds yet. It's on the roadmap, but it's just that it just doesn't make sense to do it because it like right now we're just not at that scale.
Yeah, there's definitely a cost element there, and like I said, I think it comes down to part of it is what makes fantasy sports different from a lot of other like than like let's say DeFi, right? Like there isn't a open necessarily an open feed of data. Like the level of data that we're collecting and utilizing for sports, it requires us pulling it from a reliable source. And there are only so many sources of that, and a lot of them are gated, right? Like they charge for access to that data, as opposed to price feeds or things like that, which there's they're open. You have open access to pulling that from different sources. So it's a lot easier to decentralize that data, that flow of data.
Yeah, like there's no open source reliable or like trusted source doing this. Really, it's all like gated, like you're saying.
Yeah, and that's actually why we use the sports data over just using like the ESPN API. Is using a source that is more reliable and trusted, as opposed to some of these other ones, which are just pulling. They're in a lot of ways like I mean, even just the APIs they built aren't that great, and they're gated and can be shut down. And like with this, we feel comfortable because it's a partner that we have a business relationship with, that we feel strong that we're not like they're not going to all of a sudden shut off the API in the way that like right we talk about it. It comes up a lot when we talk about decentralized marketplaces, and if are they just using the OpenSea API, or do they actually build their own like backend data source where OpenSea could just shut off that API at a certain point if they wanted to. That's that's how we're looking at it right now, and as we grow and it becomes more feasible just financially for the protocol, because this data is expensive, then we get to a place where we can, it becomes more viable for us to have multiple like APIs from different sources, that so then we are technically decentralizing that flow of data. But as of right now, it's just not feasible from like a financial standpoint for the protocol,
Yeah.
for the DAO.
And another thing, just to assure people here, because people hear all the time about like Oracle hacks, but I think this is very different because one, we upload all the stats in one big batch, and that's just kind of how stats work in leagues. Like they're kind of updated once the games are done, and then you have like a day to get them corrected, and they don't even usually get corrected these days. Like they're pretty accurate out the gate these days. But basically, like what a reason why a lot of like hacks have happened where people have oracles is because there's multiple points of arbitrage between different pricing for tokens. But you don't really have that with stats because stats are kind of like a bulk upload. You don't really have the freshness argument that you would need to have the data there and fresh every single time because it's just a one-time upload. As long as the source is reliable and you could maybe have something where the way I would like secure it down is just to make it come from multiple sources and then just take the and just ensure that everybody lines up. And if it doesn't, then you check why. But the redundancy element there is just really expensive for where we're at right now. And that's all I'm just going to say about the oracles.
Yeah, there's a lot behind the this is like a very like its own specific, I'd say, like pillar of LeagueDAO that we spent a lot of time working on and discussing and evaluating. So it's definitely something that is, it's not an afterthought for us by any means. Just to kind of wrap it up a little bit, but it's a good point to bring up. So thanks for bringing that up. Uh, should we dive in? So I guess I'll just pick a question that, I mean, sort of like after this thread, from the AMA questions that we can dive into, which is the question regarding like basically how the player draft will work, and what you like what are users paying. So how the draft will work is you each team owner will basically you mint mint a league pass, and that's the only point where you have to pay out of pocket, right, in order to participate, is minting the league pass. Once you've minted that league pass and you then redeem the pass, which is what sets you up as a team owner in the league, and you're actually assigned to a division, that you also receive as a part of that what we were calling D League tokens, which is sort of the draft league tokens, and you get X number of tokens that equal the number of picks that you have in the draft. So when you're drafting your players, you're not paying to draft each player. You are using these draft tokens to basically exchange one draft token for a player. That maintains the sort of the tokenomics, or like the tokenization, and so the players are still these NFTs that you're holding in your wallet, but you're not actually putting anything out of pocket in order to draft players. Does that clarify just that one piece? I know there's a larger conversation going on in the AMA questions channel about this, but does that clarify that one kind of initial point?
Brandon says yes.
Great. And so at current time, we have not determined what the price of the League Pass NFT will be. That's something that we want to discuss with the community, and maybe we'll just create a separate forum post regarding it. There's partly the dynamic of us wanting to, I mean, just the protocol needing to generate like revenue itself, right? Like the DAO. So to help us keep the lights on, but then also the balance of adding more, adding more to the reward pool and the prizes that people can win, but also not pricing people out. So it is a balance that we have to work and navigate, because we want it to be accessible, but we also don't want to necessarily undercut the DAO itself, because it costs money, right? We still want to make sure that like the prizes are worthwhile for the amount of time that you put in and all that sort of stuff. So there isn't an easy answer, and we're also not just going to go like it's like an NFT, we'll price it at point one ETH. Like that's not a viable approach. Like it's just not a smart way to approach it, from our opinion. Like we want to make sure that we're collecting more data before we decide on that price.
But I do want to make a note here. We are looking at it in ways that seem game theoretically sound, in ways that people who are hardcore community members get a little bit more advantage just by knowing about it early before the football season starts. So we are talking early bird discounts, which I think people would be happy with. So anybody feel free to go ahead and tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, what was the question? My bad.
No, I was just saying that like we are talking about having it set up so that there's early bird discounts. So like if you like were to buy a pass in June or July, that you get it at a cheaper rate than if somebody buys it in August.
Interesting. Is that right, Jake?
I mean, that's something we're exploring and like weighing. Is sort of that incentivizing the people that are buying their getting in early, because the earlier that we know how many people are actually participating, the better. So there definitely is that component, and it's we're just trying to factor in whether or not it, what's the value add there versus what's the cost. Is it going to materially change things and give people a real incentive, and but how does that also impact the overall like reward pool and just the dynamics? Like what are what's the floor and what's the ceiling? You still have to set those too.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it more to kind of give my input on that, to be honest. But I do like all the stuff that you guys have been working on, and I'm a fan of the proposal personally.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too, Sack Daddy. Yeah, you could have bulk team buy discounts. So if you buy them all early, but the thing is like you can only redeem one pass per address. We just picked that because it's just simpler to implement and it's less confusing of an implementation perspective. But like in theory, yeah, you could arbitrage something like that where if you're going ahead and buying a bunch of passes and now that the price to enter is higher, you could sell it to somebody at a discount and then they could go ahead and redeem their pass. Or you could just send it to a new address and then you could go ahead and redeem it that way. And then, yeah, like you said, Vivek, this also early funds could be invested for yield leading up to the Mega League. That is also a reason why.
So wait a minute, why
And
can't one address redeem more than one pass?
um, implementation details. It's ways to go ahead and make the scrambling and the randomization of the league works more smoothly and less of it's less of an expensive implementation. Like we were working through the algorithm and it's expensive to implement it if you do it multiple passes per with the way that it's randomized, multiple passes per address. It makes the algorithm like it moves it up another big O notation and expensiveness.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then it's the type of thing where also remember like we're adding so much to the protocol, and we're focusing on like the key gameplay elements, and there are still going to be certain features that we'll be able that we'll add over time, right? Like and we'll still iterate. But we felt that the level of complexity that we add by allowing one wallet to have multiple teams within the same league uh, it just outweighs the benefit, because it's pretty easy to just create a new wallet and then move your league pass to that wallet, and then you have two teams but two separate wallets. And it doesn't, you're not exposing yourself to different costs at the same time, especially since we're, if someone really wanted to have multiple teams, they can. But there's a lot of complexity there. And then there's also the element of when there are multiple leagues, right? Because we're also part of our roadmap is also building it out so that any like community or any group can go and create their own league, separate from the LeagueDAO Mega League, if you will, on the protocol. Making it so that one user can be in multiple leagues. That's a different story, but it's within the like LeagueDAO sponsored Mega League where that's where it gets a little more complex because of the different divisions and things like that. I know that this how I end up defining all this probably makes it sound a lot more confusing um, than it probably actually is.
I did want to run it back to, we had a question the other day just asking about, are we looking into other sports like soccer, and I think we definitely are looking at other sports, but I don't know if there's a specific time frame for soccer, but right now it's just the focus on football for next season as of right now.
Jake and I literally talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, we're soccer is definitely a priority for us, but that priority falls behind football, and the reality is that we only, we're still a smaller stage project or DAO, and we only have so much in terms of resources, and so we have to be smart and make sure that, because football is the biggest moment for fantasy during the year, that's our priority. And we can't commit to saying we're going to have Premier League up and running in the same exact vein as NFL in the fall, just because we can't, overextend our resources, right? And it's not like we're going out and spending stupid money and making poor decisions around that. It's just there's a lot that we're building in order to do this right, and we know that if we need the NFL, like the football season, to really be a big moment and like an opportunity for success, and to show it in order for us to then go and raise additional operating capital to give us more resources to then add more sports and things like that. And so our focus has to be on the NFL season right now. It's also taking into account, like, we just have to, I think every project, there are projects that maybe just close, big funding rounds, and that's great. But I think a lot of projects right now, you're looking at the market dynamics, and I think we all need to be pretty conservative in terms of, and especially those of us who've been through it from 2017 to 2018, 19, 20, right? Like, I think we've been through crypto winter and bear markets, and you have to anticipate it, and not just expect, capital to flow in the same ways all the time. So we're trying to be conservative and thinking long term about the overall success of LeagueDAO, and how do we ensure that as best as possible.
100%. But point being, if we go ahead and knock this out of the park, and like it goes ahead and moves way quicker than anticipated, I can't see why we wouldn't take it on. But it's just a matter of timing and resources, like Jake's saying.
Yeah, I think what's tough about it is that the Premier League starts really close to the beginning of the NFL season, and so
Yep.
we want to it's like, and I mean, you have all these sports that really happen in a very compressed window, right? Because then not long after is when basketball and hockey start. So it's a challenge, especially when you look at it from like a marketing and community engagement standpoint. Is like, we want to make sure that we have very clear messaging to people about, like, what they're joining, what league they're participating in, all that sort of stuff. So it becomes a challenge when we're promoting multiple things at the same time, and especially when we have a smaller sort of target. That's where, like I said, the resources become a different thing when you have like a specific, just like, soccer outreach team as opposed to your like NFL outreach team. But we're not at a size of a project to be able to do that at this stage. No, hopefully that'll change very soon. But we just have to be pragmatic about it. Yeah, I mean, I think long term, just like for any like any project, the challenge, the hardest part is balancing when to say no and when to say yes. I think we know that we want to keep adding sports, and we want to keep doing all this stuff, but we also need to be smart, just in like take into account, like I said, the larger market dynamics of what's going on in the crypto world and like the NFT space as a whole. And we need to be in a position to withstand an extended bear market or crypto winter if that happens.
100%.
But that's also where adding meaningful utility to the league token comes to play, because the having healthy market for the league token and people actually using it in a meaningful way, that also is a big boost for us and for the DAO, and our ability to use the league token for bounties and things like that, and that expands our capabilities, right, and our ability to do different things. So stuff like the proposal we have up now and the one we had last week, those all fit into this larger strategy that sets LeagueDAO up for long-term success.
Most definitely. I'm just thinking about a World Cup, NFB tournament. Sounds really fun.
Yeah, that's on our timeline and our roadmap, and partly is because the World Cup's happening in the fall this year, and it takes place in November, so we actually have a good amount of time after the NFL season starts to then like focus our some resources behind this NFB pool. NFB like bracket pools are a much lower lift than the than like a full on fantasy, like season long fantasy league. So that's the other piece there, but we've already planned it out and are working on that type of like, we have to iterate the NFB structure a little bit to allow the type of like round robin like group stage, as opposed to just a true single elimination tournament. But that is on our roadmap for sure, because we're all looking forward to the World Cup, and it also from like a timeline standpoint, it's more advantageous for us.
Yep. And who knows? Maybe we'll be able to, again, all depends on how quickly we can knock out the Mega League. Really all depends on that, whether we're going to be able to take on the minting of different NFTs for the Premier League.
Yeah.
We want to, though. We really want to.
Yeah, I think the other thing that also, like, this is another interesting point, just it's unique to LeagueDAO, is because we're working with real world scheduling and timing, like we don't have the flexibility that other projects have, because we did this last year where we pushed the launch date back, and we don't want to do that again. We need to make sure that the NFL Fantasy League is starting in time with the beginning of the NFL season, and there's no delay there. But like, we have to work against fixed real world deadlines, as opposed to when you're building just like other tech products where your deadlines are kind of artificial, right, and they can move based on stuff. So like, that's what also causes us to we have to be really careful to make sure that we're staying in line with these deadlines that we have to hit. But we're yeah, I mean, fortunately, like I said, like we have like our data provider, sports data, in the license we've included different sports, so it's not just NFL, so that like we have the data feeds. It's just factoring in how long it takes for us to get everything like teed up or connected. And EPL is a part of that. So we do have the like license for the data feed for EPL right now, which is a big piece of the puzzle. And it's an API that we work with, right, just regarding our other products. But we just want to be careful before we say yes, just because we know what we're building, like for version 2, is so ambitious that we're taking on a lot. But I will say, like, long term, what we're doing at this stage is actually going to make it even easier. It's going to make it easier for us to add additional sports and leagues, from the like framework of the actual like protocol itself, but also the fact our strategy of changing how we're approaching the player artwork, so that we're using one core character as opposed to commissioning a different artist for each sport. That also just makes it a lot easier for us to be able to launch a like soccer, right? Because then we don't have to go and find and commission a new artist to create unique artwork just for soccer. Like that in itself takes a lot of time. So what we're doing now is setting us up to be able to add different sports and stuff much faster as we go forward. I know we've probably spent too much more time than anyone wanted us to spend on talking about this component, but I hope that gives some clarity as to how we're thinking about it and evaluating.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions and wants to come up on stage, feel free to request to speak and we'll bring you on up. Also, I don't know if this guy is it in the AMA questions channel. I just sent this card. Is this his real name, Chester McLaughlin?
I mean, probably. Yeah, that is
pretty wild.
he played in the NFL for 11 years.
I found some crazy cards from way back, some pretty funny ones. Let's see. Yeah. So who do you guys think did the best in the draft for day one?
That's
Definitely Jets, Lions, and Giants. New York did well. Detroit did well. Baltimore is like in fourth, and then the Eagles in fifth.
I feel like all the teams, like, I mean, there's a couple things that kind of felt like, I know, like the Houston taking the cornerback that Houston took for number 3 was a surprise to people, but like, I feel like this was a draft where a lot of teams played it really safe.
I was understanding but disappointed that my Bears and their new general manager did not trade up into the first round. I'm going to kind of miss Pace and his random swings up there, but as much as they like destroyed this franchise, they were exciting.
I
So I
mean,
understand.
I always think back to like someone tell me how like with like Belichick and the Patriots, their strategy like for a long, especially when they had like Tom Brady and they had that core, like was to always, where possible, trade away your first round pick to gain more like second, third, and fourth round picks, because statistically those are the best value. Like, because you have to pay a first round pick first round money, the likelihood of you getting a good return on investment there is a lot harder, depending on the position too. But so interesting to see. I think Detroit did well. Interesting to see.
The Ravens
I
got
think,
that Kyle Hamilton guy who is
yeah.
gross, and so they're going to be that. Hopefully, I'm thinking that he's going to make an impact on that team.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that the Detroit got Williams, and even though he's out for like probably a while because he tore his ACL, but the wide receiver from Alabama, and that the fact they were able to get him in the number 12 pick, where I think a lot of people thought he was going to be the first wide receiver to go, that's a pretty big pickup for them.
I've always thought it was like so risky, like when teams take a quarterback in the first like few picks. Like I've always just thought that was kind of like, and usually the team that will be taking a quarterback will be like a terrible team, like we see, like that happens all the time. So I actually think
the
that this
Jaguars
draft,
last year.
actually the teams played it way smarter when I go look at the picks, because I honestly missed it yesterday. I was busy, but yeah, I like it that most of the teams took like the more like foundational positions, because it's always like not good for the quarterback or the team when they like will take one of these like really good quarterbacks that could have like had a career had he gone somewhere else.
Yeah, you see that a lot. I mean, I am also, I think, in terms of just like quarterback, the Steelers taking Kenny Pickett is it feels like a pretty safe move for them. I don't know if they necessarily needed to pick him, in the first round. Like I don't know what their second round picks are, because it seemed like he wasn't necessarily the top quarterback. But for them to get him to then like he's going to play professionally in the stadium where he played college football, like it's a great pick.
Oh, that's interesting that they went for him. And they do need a quarterback, like, and that team, in my opinion, is like one of the few teams that like doesn't really need to keep stacking up their defense or like, but so that's
Yeah, and
kind
they
of
have good talent around. Like they have what's his face, like the rookie running back who had a great year, who's a good like receiving running back too. So he creates a lot of like safe little passes and stuff. Like I feel like especially with if you look at how Ben Roethlisberger played last year, he really wasn't throwing the ball down the field very much. So like their offense was actually pretty like safe, I would say, for a young quarterback potentially to step into. But it'd be a great story if he was successful. But see, I mean, I'm definitely more interested in today in the like second, third rounds. I think that's where you get a lot of really cool stuff, like a lot of interesting picks come in.
Definitely. Cool. Well, we're almost up at the hour. If anyone else has questions, yeah, feel free to shoot them over in the AMA questions channel or request to jump up here.
Yeah, and we'll also next week we'll put out another issue of the League Pass, like just our newsletter.
Oh, the field report.
The the field report. What did I call it?
You called it the League Pass.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the
No.
field report, and I could also be called a League Pass, right? I guess that's the TV subscription for NFL.
Yeah.
But yeah, the field report, the Medium newsletter, and so we'll send that out next week, and that'll have more details in terms of like what the dev team's been working on, and the state of different stuff. But I would say, big picture, we've been making a lot of progress. The UI, we've been really finalizing a lot of the wireframes and the UI designs, and it looks great. Like we're really happy with it, and I think we're integrating the Web3 components in a pretty seamless way. So it's going to feel intuitive, and that's going to be huge. So we've got a lot of good stuff going on. And maybe the last thing is, if you haven't, please vote on the snapshot, and definitely weigh in the forum. Like the feedback is appreciated one way or the other, right? That's the why we're putting this up for a vote, is we want to make sure that we're actually getting input from the community and like developing this with the community, as opposed to just us telling the core team telling the community what we're doing.
Cool. And then yeah, I'll just make a reminder for the weekly stat contest. We are looking for more current stats, so like for that actual week, or maybe within a 2 week time frame. Just for everyone, if anyone was interested in entering that, just yeah, keep in mind we're looking for a bit more up to date current stats. So it could be NBA playoffs, NHL stuff, whatever it is. But and then we're looking for it in meme format, and there's an example in the weekly Statcast channel.
Yeah, I think just like small, like single snippet stats that we could then turn into content. That's the goal. So, I think we'll give preference to something around the NFL draft. If you happen to find an interesting stat that emerges out of the NFL draft, share that, and we'll definitely weigh that more favorably, because it's pretty relevant.
Definitely. Cool. Yeah, I think we can wrap it up unless anyone else has anything.
Nope, think we're done. All right.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone.
Catch you guys next week.